Hello and welcome. Today I am talking to the wonderful, amazing, outstanding Nikki Payne. That's you. That's you. And we're going to be talking about pride and protest, and also being a first-time published author in the Jane Austen romance adjacent world. And I'm so excited and thrilled about not only you, but like you getting to write this and this being in the world for people. Self-described as Jane Austen's sassy black friend, Nikki Payne is a curious tech anthropologist asking the right questions to deliver better digital services. By night, she dreams of ways to subvert canon literature. She's a member of Smut U, a premium feminist writing collective, and is a cat lady with no cats. She describes her romance as inspired by the classics turned expectations on their head. It's cultural commentary for the hopeless romantic. What an amazing way to view romance. What an amazing way to come at it. So, Pride and Protest, for those who do not know, is your book. Your book.
It's my baby.
It's your baby. It according to the little tiny snippet, which does not give the full picture, it is about a woman going head to head with the CEO of a corporation threatening to destroy her neighborhood in this fresh and modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice.
From Miss Jane.
Ah, okay. Is there anything else about this novel you want to add to just get people excited and give people a basis for understanding? I mean, we all know
Sure.
Pride and Prejudice. We can kind of get an idea of where this is going.
Yeah, so the one thing that I absolutely love about this book is that if you are an Austenite, a Janeite, you are going to follow these beats. You're going to recognize all of the beats. You're going to love it. But even if you've never read a Jane Austen, never even heard of the lady, never even been to Bath, then I know, how dare. Um, then I think the story stands on its own because one of my favorite things about Jane Austen is that her themes are like these steel threads that take particularly like that POV of this woman a little bit outside of society, and that threads all the way into 2023. There'll always be room for that POV, always be room for that kind of sharp and incisive social commentary. And I think there'll always be pressure on women to, to couple and marry in a particular way. And Jane Austen will always be relevant for that.
I could not agree more. So many things to be said about that, and how, even modern adaptations. We just got Fire Island, which I think also shows just how endlessly relatable and adaptable Pride and Prejudice and Austen is. But
The way I just watched that so immediately, it was embarrassing. It was like Fire Island is on. It's like, say less. Yeah.
just if they could just start delivering that right into my brain so that I don't have to do the extra steps of,
Yeah. I don't
logging
want to click
on.
that.
Now, Pride and Protest is coming November 2022, so people can already check that out. I'll put all the links in the description so people can find it and get on board. But I want to talk to you about just this as a writer coming into this, your first time publishing a book. So first up, I would love to know what brought you to romance.
Oh man, I cut my teeth on romance. If you can imagine this extremely precocious 10-year-old like reading really like maybe low-key racist, highly inappropriate like romance novels with like sheiks on the cover, you know what I mean? And like women being ravaged. I absolutely cut my teeth on just old school Nora Garwood, Johanna Lindsay. Like if there's a pirate and hair flowing and bosoms heaving, I read it. So that was my what I call like my original genre. I started to read outside of that, like ton of Stephen King, ton of mystery, but romance had shaped my brain so much that there are times when I was reading Stephen King and these two characters are like swimming around each other. I'm just like, the tension. I'm reading Stephen King for the sexual tension. Like that's how far gone I was. I was always a romance writer, always a romance reader, even as I'm reading other genres. So romance is really my kind of natural home. I write a ton of like speculative fiction and like I write a ton of like sci-fi and Afrofuturism, but at the heart of the core of the tension in most of my work is about how two people can grow to work together, grow to move toward the same goal, coming from different experiences and different backgrounds. And I think that's the heart of romance. Is like, how do these people come together? How does anyone come together in spite of obstacles in their way? And I think that's always going to be compelling, even if it's not romance and you're just watching a buddy comedy of like two cops who are just so far apart and they have to work together. You're still in it to see how they build and how they reach their goal. And that's romance.
Love comes in so many forms. And I love
Doesn't
that. I love that. Now, shifting over to the Austen world, I'd love to know, what is your favorite Austen novel and why?
Oh man, it definitely rotates. It definitely rotates. I, for a long time, I was a huge fan of Emma, and Emma mostly because of Clueless, actually. Clueless is what brought me into the Jane Austen world when I was young. I was like, Clueless is an adaptation of who now? What now? And I was gone. Yeah, I was gone. So Emma was actually like the first thing that I watched. And then I watched 1995, like the classic Pride and Prejudice. And I'm just like, I love this bitch. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot believe she's over here writing all this shit. I was like, I was floored. So Emma brought me to Jane Austen, but Pride and Prejudice, I stayed for Mr. Darcy, and then like I grew to grow into persuasion. I think as you get older, Anne starts to grow on you and read differently as you age. As a woman who has made mistakes and who regrets decisions, like most of our Jane Austen heroines are too young to have made, any serious mistakes. They're in the first blushes of love. But Anne um, has been around that kind of emotional block, and now into my old age, I'm settling into the complexity of Anne as a character, Anne Elliot. Persuasion. Yeah.
I've totally feel you on the Clueless to Persuasion track. I feel like that's probably like much more common than people really have thought of, but it's there. Now I'd love
It
to
also
know.
happens to be my favorite adaptation, Clueless. As if.
It's unbeatable. It's so good.
Earth shattering.
I'd love to know about how you got started in writing and just that initial steps toward becoming a writer.
Oh man. Okay, so I'm like one of those. This is gonna like piss everybody off, but I think that like anyone who writes is a writer. So like if you have like an account on Wattpad, or if you're just like jotting things down all the time, or you have these ideas in the shower, like don't discount that value for what it is. Like oftentimes people see a writer as this lone wolf with all this spare and leisure time to just type away, but for most of my life, I have been writing tiny little ideas carved out in the back of a truck and just writing something out. And then suddenly, before you know it, it's turned into a fleshed out idea. And like the first things you write, like be prepared for like your first drafts to be like just kind of not what you thought, right? Like the execution from your mind to the paper in that first draft is never it. But sometimes that's enough to make people stop to say, like, gosh, I thought I was a writer and I can't actually execute on this idea. But that's what first drafts are for. The first draft is just you telling your story to yourself, and then you just roll over it over and over and over, right? This all feels like a like you've heard this before if you've ever tried to write, but like the whole idea of like writing is rewriting. You spend 3 to 4 months writing a draft. Like you just write it drunk and you're just like, oh, this is so sad, this is so terrible. And then you spend maybe a year, right, in this writing process revising that work. And so I would say if you have an idea, you can literally eat that elephant, or maybe a more PETA friendly example, you can manage that task little by little. So don't get into the sense of like, one, I have to be inspired to write. You don't. You just have to get give yourself 200 words to write. And even if it's just like, I am writing 200 words today, all you have to do is chunk away at it piece by piece. And then by the end, you'll have something. It may not be the most beautiful thing you've ever written, but you're already ahead of 89% of the people. You know what I mean? To have completed a draft of a thought. You're already there. And something that I did was I wrote all these books, and I had this big speculative fiction book that I thought was just gonna really break through. And I said, this is it. And I'm sending them all out to like all these agents, and I'm getting back this wave of no's. Like everyone's just like, no, we hate you, you know? And it was just no after no after no. But in the middle of querying, I just started writing this thing. I was like, you know what I love? I just need a Jane Austen break. Jane Austen saves. Okay, she really does. Um, so I just need a Jane Austen break. So I was just like, oh, I love this. I'm watching this again for the 100th time. I'm just gonna write, what if these characters were this? And I started writing it, and it started bringing me so much joy. And then I submitted that joyful manuscript in the midst of all of this wave of no's to this Pitch Wars program. And I got accepted. I got accepted to the Pitch Wars program. And I was like, oh, wow, I actually have to revise this manuscript. And then I revised the manuscript, and it went crazy. I got like maybe 25 agents asking for the manuscript. And I sold the book like at auction for like four-way auction. So like a ton of houses wanted the book. And this was born out of me just being so tired of the no's and writing from this joy. And it turned into this thing that is now bigger than me. So my writing journey was interesting, but it was also a lesson in like not stopping that thing that brings you joy, because you will actually be surprised at what actually clicks and connects with people.
I'd love to know more if you have anything else to share about just how Pride and Protest came to you. So it seemed like it was in this moment of trying to just like get out of a lot of feelings that you were having around your other book. But also because, Jane Austen saves.
Jane Austen saves. She does. So yeah. So I read Pride and Prejudice as a child, and I always heard that like Black people don't read Jane Austen. We can't relate to women of leisure, and we out here grinding. What do we have to do with that? But I was Black, and I loved it. And on top of this, I'm a anthropologist who studies culture and desirability. And I ran across this article. I'll never forget this. And it was analyzing the data from dating apps. And it indicated that like Black women and Asian men were like the least responded to in these apps. And that was like wrapped up in our own kind of notions of desirability and masculinity and femininity. So with Pride and Protest, I decided to like kind of remix these iconic characters. Like, what if we made this clever and desirable woman Black? What if we made this iconic male brooding hero Asian? And I fell in love with them and the story. And like that my DJ, that Lisa ended up being a DJ, felt both connected to Elizabeth Bennet's love of reading, and also extremely modern in the way that someone relates to media. And that Darcy is this developer who is in this world but out of it, like creating that reason for him to have this kind of tension and separation from people. It just felt so natural, and it just fell together. So like in Pride and Protest, like Lisa and Darcy, like they start really stuck in their preconceived ideas about what's right. They think they're at the end of their story, right? But you and I know that they're at the very beginning, right? So I loved how that came to me, and I loved writing them. Even now, like as a person who loves Jane Austen, I can still go back to the manuscript that I've seen 100 million times and find that spark of joy. I loved writing
I love the way you talk about this. I love the way you talk about them. It feels so sparkly. It feels so fun and exciting. And I can feel like your energy is contagious
them.
around this. And
I
I
love them.
uh so getting back to the whole process around publishing, talk about what that's been like for you.
Oh my gosh. I am such a nervous Nelly noob that as soon as I signed my contract, I was like, okay, look out, world, here I come. And then it's literally waiting, just waiting. 9 months later, you get an email from an editor saying, hey, what's up? How are you? Well, like, let's talk. The thing that I'll tell anyone about, like in the traditional publishing space, is that there is a considerable amount of waiting. Like finishing Pride and Protest, this is like 2020, where I'm just wrapping up the novel and about to sell it. And then like 2021, I sell it. And then now at the end of 2022, it's a book. So the process is not like I've signed a contract, my book's coming out this year, not even next year, maybe not even the year after that. So it is an extreme process in waiting, in patience, and it forces you to engage with the power of the pause, right? Um, One of the things that I didn't expect in this space was like angst about book covers. Like I'm not the type of person who like I'm not the type of person who reads a book or grabs a book because of the cover. Like if I'm in a library and I have this ton of books, I go for the back jacket. I'm already in a section called like smutty romance, right? So it's just that's it. You know what I mean? I'm already in the section in which I would take a ton of books. And so I just start reading those back covers, and like flipping through a couple of chapters. And it became so important to me to realize how much a cover is, like you mentioned, it's almost a trailer for a book. You know what I mean? It's a selling document. And I had to get really hip and really wise to what I wanted on my cover, what I was trying to say with that cover, because it's very easy to like go into a marketing meeting, kind of let that roll over you and say, oh, they know how to sell a book. But there are some real questions, and like, how do I want this character represented? How does this how do we ensure that this is the book that people think it is? And those are real questions, and that surprised me the most in the publishing space, is like the politics of a book cover.
That is fascinating. Is there anything else that you wish you'd known, like for, especially people who maybe they're really new to this? Like, is there anything that you wish that you'd known going into this that you can share with folks?
Oh man, I thought that you needed to be this like social media guru. Like you just needed to like know all of these things and be on social media. And what I realized is that I have a safe lane. Like I love Twitter. Twitter's my favorite. Um, but as far as like building aesthetics, I'm still very terrible at that. I'm a writer. I have a writer's brain. You know what I mean? Not very visual at all. Like building aesthetics and like having like an active like engagement on TikTok and on Instagram, I've really struggled with that. And when I see other people have success, I think like, okay, this I'll never reach out to the people because like I'm not good in these mediums of social media. So I kind of had to learn, and I'm still learning, not had to learn. I'm still learning to like have strength in my lane to say like, hey, if Twitter is your vibe, stay on Twitter, and and other social media will come, and I'll become comfortable in those other spaces. So I've been focusing on like what I'm good at and kind of letting what I'm good at spill over into those other channels. But we'll see how long that lasts. But yeah, I think trying to become comfortable and not trying to spread myself out and be this like TikTok guru, Instagram aesthetics, or like Pinterest, or just like being in those spaces. Like I just had to be in my lane.
What advice do you have for aspiring writers that maybe are seeing this and feeling a lot of feelings of relatability to your kind of initial experiences?
Oh man. Um, okay, this is gonna sound very counter to what I just said, read social media, but get on Twitter. um, I'm saying that because like writing contest and pitch events and the writing community and all kinds of small ways that you connect with most of the Twitter mutuals and the writing friends that I have made, the writing community that I've made have been on Twitter. And there are tons of, in fact, oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to plug this. I am a mentor in this smooch pit, right? And this is where someone, hey, you want to be a writer and you have a query letter, the first 50 pages and a synopsis, and you give it to these mentors and they soup it up and then get it ready for you to submit to an agent. And there are tons of little events like this. I am a writer now because of a Twitter pitch event called Pitch Fest. So there's just so many opportunities. Like you don't have to like be a Twitter guru, but the community I feel like is on Twitter, and the opportunities to like find out about writing pitches and agents and like literary tea, it's on Twitter for the most part.
I mean, I love, like, side note, Twitter conversations around publishing, especially romance, like,
It's so juicy.
it is like, it's like getting like a daily gossip column. Like, if you want that, you're
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of like, it's constantly a combo of like, it's juicy, but I'm also suddenly disappointed in somebody.
Yes, yes, yes. It's juicy, it's messy, and you get to understand like, hey, this is what matters, this community, this is what doesn't. And so like just also being able to like learn the language of the community that you're going to join. A lot of people make this kind of like people get dragged on Twitter for small things like if you're in a romance, if you're writing a romance and you say, well, you know, my work is more of a literary romance, right? Because people want to shy away from or they have feelings about what it means to be a romance writer, right? Because it's wrapped up in all of this kind of internalized misogyny. And one of the things that we've made into a safe space is like, look, you know, women like focusing on women's joy and women's pleasure is not like sad, it's not shameful, it's not bad. And so like that's one of the first things you have to shed, kind of coming into that community. And those are the types of things you learn being in a kind of Twitter community around like what the argo is, I guess. Such a pretentious word. But you know.
Speaking of community, I'd love to know what folks can do to support authors, especially debut authors, because I think like you're touching on all these things, right? Where it's just like from the author perspective, but also what can people who are like want to help? Because clearly, like it can be overwhelming for for an author. But what about people who are like, we love you, we love your work, we want to be your cheerleading section? What are things they can just do?
Oh man, cheerleading section. The still the tried and true way any book gets sold is literally just going to your friend's house and saying, "Girl, let me tell you about this nasty book." And like that is actually the way. So that word of mouth, like the communities that you're a part of. Like if you're on Reddit and someone is saying, "Oh my gosh, what's the next Jane Austen that you've heard of?" Just posting that link, or you're in a book club and you are talking about what the next book is to read, like that word of mouth, and making sure that that book is kind of in the conversation about not just Jane Austen books, but romance novels or like a multicultural romance or any of those ways that you want to relate to or come toward it. Just keeping that book in conversation does so much. And these aren't even like material things of like purchasing the book, like calling your local library and saying, hey, is this book available? And like, can we do a book club there? And that library, oftentimes when you ask, will purchase the book. You know what I mean? And then purchase the book for the entire community to share. So like those types of small things really matter. That word of mouth is it's just so powerful. And again, like making sure that those entities like your local bookstores and the library have that book available, talking about it.
Now, finally, I want you to tell people where they can follow you, how they can get Pride and Protest, all of the things about you.
Okay, so my favorite is Twitter. If you are on Twitter, I am Nikki Payne 14. And I don't know why they added a 14. I just wanted to be Nikki Payne, but Twitter won't let me live. So I'm Nikki Payne 14 on Twitter. Please follow me. I love followers. I get pretty silly, pretty funny on Twitter. I am also on Instagram, but do not expect awesome content. Not, not if it's just me. Um, so this is terrible. I do know my Instagram handle. Oh, it's nikki.payne.romance. So that's me on Instagram. And then I'm still Nikki Payne Writes on TikTok as well. So if you want to connect with me in those ways, I don't connect in those other mediums as frequently as I do on Twitter, but by all means follow me because there's always something silly and ridiculous that I'm talking about. And then you can be a part of the conversation, you know?
I don't think anything you say is silly. I think it is just elevating Austen in a different plane that's much needed. Thank you so much. Like, I
I
just thank
love this.
you for being in this community and thank you for bringing us these stories that not only are, pieces of you, right, that you're bringing into this world and you're sharing with us, but like continuing to really push forward, I think, a space that all of us really are hungry for, which is
Oh, man.
the Austen world and the Austen adjacent world and pushing it, continuing to make it, whether it's Fire Island or your book or whatever. I think Austen fans, at least the circles I'm in, we are hungry for this work. We're hungry for people who are excited creators behind things. And I'm so eager for this
Oh,
book to get out. And I'm so eager for more of your stuff. I'm so eager for one day your speculative work to get picked up because you are a gem. That's
oh
what I
my
want.
gosh. Bianca, first of all, you are one of the most welcoming people in the community that, as you know, can be kind of daunting,
It can.
right?
There's some lady Karens out there.
There's some lady Karens and they like it their way. And just to bump into you some years ago in this space and talk with you about like what was dope about Jane Austen, it was like an immediate kindred spirit. And you are part of the reason why communities like this thrive, is that you are open and asking questions about what else. And honestly, it's not happening a ton in in the Jane Austen space. But thanks to people like you and the community here, it gets to.
And that's what's exciting. Like I love this. And I love that people want to be part of these things, whether it's virtual Gen Con or any, supporting works or making their own works. But I hope this has inspired, hopefully, people who are feeling that same way about like writing those 200 words a day, writing that
Do it.
Wattpad romance, whatever is making
Do
them
it.
feel good, and thinking about the wider world and maybe dipping their fingers into it. Thank you so much. Good luck on this new venture with your book. Good luck on this debut year. And also on revisions and writing for all those future works that are going to be
Yes.
coming from those brilliant hands of yours. Um, for folks who are, I guess, tuning in, because we are posting this on YouTube at some point in the future, don't forget to check out all the virtual Gen Con programming, which I will link in the description. I will also link all of Nikki's wonderful things in the description. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, check out other programming while you're here.